Yo, what's up? All right, so today I wanted to talk about the DualSense Edge PS5 controller, and I wanted to give some of my initial opinions of this particular controller and why I think it is probably one of the best pro controllers, quote unquote, that you can get. And it's definitely the best one for the PS5. But you could also use this on PC as well. So that's why I said one of the best, not, maybe the best. But I think one of the best. It's up there. But I'm mainly going to be talking about this from the PS5 perspective and some of the other controllers that I've used that are similar. Let's jump into it. All right, so let's start off with what you get with the PS5 DualSense Edge controller. When you buy it, it is $199. Of course, you're going to get the DualSense Edge controller. Of course, you're going to get this hard shell carrying case. It does have the PS5 or PlayStation logo on it. And then when you open it up, you're going to have a few accessories in here. You're going to have some different like thumbstick modules. You're going to have a concave one, and then you're going to have some of the domed type of stick, and then they're different heights. And then you have this little adapter here that's going to attach to your charging cable, which is going to keep it from being pulled out of the PlayStation when you have it plugged in. And then you also have the paddles right here that just snap into the bottom of the controller. So you have two paddles. Then you have two buttons that go right here, which is what I prefer and what I use. You see the buttons. They just pop in and out like magnetically, but they don't fall out. You can do like a Flossie Carter shake test on it. They don't come out at all. They will stay in there. So you get this braided cable. It is very long. I don't know exactly. If I had to guess, I would say like 4 feet maybe. It's really long. That's what she said. Okay, little Michael Scott, the office joke. Got a little PlayStation branding on it. Enough of the bull stuff though. Let's get into the good stuff about the controller itself. Throw that off to the side. So when you compare it to a regular PS5 controller, it is a little bit heavier. I would say it feels maybe like 1.5 times the weight of the regular controller. So it definitely is heavier. It also has these two so you have the paddles that go on the bottom, and then you have these buttons right here, which I'm sure if you've looked at any other video about the DualSense Edge, you know what I'm talking about. I prefer these like buttons or whatever you will. You also can adjust the trigger stops up here at the top. So, right now, depending on the game you play, you're going to have the full trigger pull. If you wanted to play a game, say like Call of Duty, you pull that down, and then when you pull on the trigger, it only goes that far. Now, I will say this. With some games, you're going to have to go into the software and adjust, and I'm going to show that on screen here in a second. You're going to have to adjust like the dead. You have to boost it up so that like when you press, like I'll give you an example. If you play Warzone and you go to drive one of the vehicles, if you have the trigger stops, like your car is going to stutter almost because it doesn't recognize that this is a full trigger pull on or some of the older Call it, not Modern Warfare 2, but the ones before that. What is it? The World War II one that just come out, and like, Modern Warfare 1, stuff like that. So with that said, the controller's battery life is not as good as the regular DualSense, but it's not terrible. I probably got about 5 hours out of it, but I'll be honest, I played Diablo 4 beta this whole entire weekend. It was the open beta weekend, downloaded it for free, and I streamed for 5 hours, 2 separate times, and in the 5 hours, I still had like 1 bar of battery left. So I don't know how much more I could have gotten out of it. But I do know that previously I played and maybe like 4 hours of Resident Evil 4 Remake, which also recently come out. Played that, and it seemed like after 4 hours, it kind of like was starting to die, where I got the low battery warning. Now, one thing about it is Diablo 4 doesn't have the trigger intensity effects like Resident Evil. So there's that. And then some of the vibrations are not the same. And also, I think Diablo 4 doesn't have the speaker like it does in Resident Evil 4. So using more resources for the controller features probably goes into the battery life being run down a little bit faster. So keep that in mind depending on what game it is that you are going to play. Other than that, though, you got this textured trackpad, which is nice. You do have the colored buttons I like. I wish they went back to like the pink, blue, green, what was it, yellow of like the older PlayStation. You know, if you look at any of the regular DualSense controllers, they are all this clear, where these ones have this, it's clear, but they're white because they have the black buttons on there. So I do like that. Everything else is the same though. These are easily swappable. You just pop it off, and then when you want to replace it, you just pop it on and push down. You know, you'll hear it click when you get there. Everything else is the same. You do have these function buttons, so you hold down the function button. You have another one over here, and then you would press like triangle, square, X, circle, and that's going to give you profiles. So I have one set up for Elden Ring. I have one set up for No Man's Sky. I have one set up for, I can't remember, you have 4 of them in total. I have a default one that like disables the buttons on the bottom, and maybe, I don't think it's Warzone, maybe it's Gran Turismo, I don't remember. But anyway, you can set up like 4 profiles. I just leave one default that disables these bottom buttons because some games I don't want to accidentally press it, and that was the case with Resident Evil 4. I didn't want to have a profile for it, but something like Diablo, I wanted to have that because I didn't want to take my thumb off the thumbstick. So instead of pressing like X for my basic attack, I could just use like my middle finger and press on the bottom button. So I really like that. Now let's talk about the difference between other similar type controllers. So I have had a Scuff Vantage controller that was for the PS4. That was cheap plastic. I mean, I know they're popular controllers, and this is not a knock on the controller. If you have one, that's fine, because this is all preference. Like maybe you don't like things that I like. Maybe you don't want the controller that weighs as much as this, or maybe you don't like, you know, maybe you would prefer to have like offset thumbsticks similar to Xbox. I don't. I prefer the side-by-side. So if I had to choose between like a Scuff or the DualSense Edge, the Scuff may have better battery life, but I think it's a worse quality controller. This is a very high quality controller, much like the DualSense controller. You know, it's probably even more high quality, or it feels more high quality. You've got the textured grips down here on the bottom, which I like. You know, so there's that right there. Then you have the Astro C40, which is another controller that I use. So the Astro C40 works on the PlayStation 4. It is a little bit bigger. You can see it, pull it out, a little bit bigger. And I would say it's a little bit more heavy than the DualSense Edge, but not by much. It's got rubber grips, and you have the buttons down here, but you can't swap these out for paddles like you can with the DualSense Edge. It does have swappable thumbsticks. And the cool thing about the Astro C40 is you can swap the placement. So if you want the Xbox layout, you could have that, and I went ahead and did it. Normally I don't play like this, but I did it for this video. You have a little tool and you unscrew it like here, and then over here, and then you can swap the D-pad and the thumbstick and then have like a normal PlayStation layout. The problem with the Astro C40 is it does not work with PS5 games. Now, it will work on the PS5 console, but it only works with PS4 games running on the PS5. So while you can use it for PS5 games, you won't have the ability to use the bottom buttons with the PS5 games, but you know, you can still use it on the console. The downside to this, though, is you also have to have this dongle for it to work, where with the DualSense, You don't need a dongle. It just automatically connects to the PS5 via Bluetooth, and that's going to be the same thing with the SCUF, which is why I think this is the best option for the PS5 console. If you can get past the lower battery life, like battery life on this one does last maybe 8 hours or so, give or take, but of course it's not going to have all the features that the DualSense has, like the trigger effects, or the intensity of the trigger, like where you pull the trigger and you can feel it like fighting you, like say like in a Warzone or Call of Duty type game. It does have the speaker here, and that works with some games, but again, it's not going to work with PS5 games. Only going to work on PS4 games. That's the downside. What I like about it is it does have a headphone jack right there, although the PS5 has that as well. But, you know, it's just nice to have some of the features up here. You're going to have the same thing like trigger stops. You can adjust it. And it's got software. The one thing about the Astro C40 is you have to manage the software on a PC or a Mac, whereas I can do everything on the PS5, and I'm going to show that here in a second, show you the setup for it. I think, like, you know, if you're someone that doesn't care too much about PS5 features, like trigger intensity on the speaker, you know, on the PS5 controller, you can probably pick this up for a little bit cheaper than you can the DualSense Edge. It also works with PC, but so does the DualSense Edge. The downside to the DualSense Edge is not all the games support the features like trigger intensity and stuff like that with the DualSense Edge on PC. So you have to keep that in mind. But then again, not every game on the PlayStation 5 has the features. Elden Ring is missing some of the features still to this day. Elden Ring, very popular game, and it's actually owned, like, I think PlayStation or Sony owns like 15% of From Software. So the fact that they haven't implemented some of the particular DualSense or PS5 features into the game is kind of shocking. But let's jump into the software now. Another thing I wanted to mention before I jump into setting up the controller is, you know, you can change out the stick modules. These are $20. So I like this. So if you get stick drift on your controller, you can easily just pop this little plastic part up right here, and the module just pops out, and then you replace it with this stick module. And that's similar to the C40, the Astro C40, very similar in that regard. So instead of having to buy another controller for $70, you could just buy a stick for $20. I don't know, maybe these will drop in the future, but for now, they're $20. All right, let's jump into settings. I thought I was going to be able to record this on the PlayStation, but I can't, so I'm going to have to do this manually. So holding my phone. So what we have here is we have the DualSense Edge controller. Hopefully you guys can see this. I do have a capture card, but my PC video card is fried, and I'm still waiting on a replacement. So right here with the DualSense Edge controller, and if you don't know how to do this, just tap the PlayStation home button on your controller, and then you're going to go over here to the controller. So you'll just come down to it, highlight it, and then you're just going to tap X. It's going to pop up. This will pop up here, DualSense Edge controller, and then you just go to controller settings. Now you can do this with it plugged in or wirelessly, which is cool. For the Astro C40, it always has to be plugged in. And then you're going to come down here, and then you're just going to select the DualSense Edge wireless controller. So I mentioned the custom profiles and said that you could have a couple different profiles. So we will select that first. Hopefully this is coming out clear. And as you can see right here, default profile, Resident Evil, which I didn't think I had a profile for, Warzone, and Elden Ring. So you can come in here and adjust these. You know, you can go create custom profile, and then, you know, I can recreate like Resident Evil. I guess it was Diablo that I didn't want to have one on. Irregardless, you can set these up. Like, and I'll just give you an example here. We'll come down here to Warzone, and then we're going to go over to these three little tabs. Tap that, and then you can rename it, delete it, copy it. And then we're going to go over here to this switch button, assign other profile, and then change shortcut or unassign. And we'll just click on Warzone. And then right here, customize button assignments. We're going to go over that. And then you can see right here, customize button assignments, Warzone, and then it shows you what each of the buttons do and how they function. And then of course on the bottom here, so I'm going to have the right trigger and the left trigger for square and circle, because those are buttons that I'm going to press a lot in game. And I don't want to have to take my thumb off of my thumbstick to press a button. So I always have control over my game. Now you can reset it, whatever, you can remap it. So if I want to remap this right here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit reset. And then right up here, you see L2. And then we can come down here and then just select what we want to reset it to. You can disable it, etc. Change it, and then you can just change it to which button it is that you would like to map it to. So very useful there. What's cool about it is you can even map like the right or left side of the trackpad. I think that's really cool right there. So you could utilize that to where the left side is going to still open up like your map, but the right side of the trackpad would actually have a different function. You can even change the options button and map that to the bottom, which is really cool. So if you wanted to, you know, map like one side of your controller. Another cool thing is you could do the swipe. If you wanted to set the swipe for a function on the bottom, let's say a game has like where you swipe up. I think Resident Evil may have that. One of the games I play has this feature. You could remap that. And then of course, you know, you have like the left and right side of the trackpad that has different functions. You're able to actually map that to the bottom buttons on the controller, which in my opinion is really cool. That's something you cannot do with the Astro C40. I am not sure about the Scuff because I only had the Scuff controller for about 2 months, and I ended up just reselling it because I did not like it at all. I just felt like the build quality wasn't that good, but whatever, that's just personal opinion. So right here, you have stick sensitivity and dead zone. So we can look at this right here. Left stick, you have like this sensitivity curve. Then you have these dead zone adjustments. And now this is just a stick. You can see it's fully lined up there. You can click on it and adjust it. I'm not going to mess with that, but if you wanted to redo that, you could. You know, you can come up here and set default. You have like quick, precise, steady, digital, dynamic, and you can see each one of these gives you an example of what it does. Enable smooth and stable movement, ideal for when you need to move smoothly in action games. So maybe something like a Elden Ring, which is an action RPG, but not an action RPG similar to Diablo, but it is considered an action RPG. No, that is the genre. But again, you have some default ones there, or you could go ahead and just set it up yourself. Then you have trigger dead zones. This is what I was talking about for some of the games like where you wanted to drive the vehicle. So right here, you have input range 0 to 100. That's going to be the full range of motion when you pull down on the on the trigger. So as an example, we just use this one. That is the full range. And then this trigger over here, I had it set up for the small trigger stop. So with some of the games, you could set this like 100 to 100 or 99 to 100, and then that's going to make the game think you're going from 0 to 100, if that makes sense or whatever. So, you know, it's going to activate at 99 and then stop at 100, if that makes sense. Whereas now it stops at 0 and then it goes all the way up to 100. So that is how you change it. I actually have a video. I will link that. It's the same on the Astro C40, which is what I did the video on, as it would be for the DualSense Edge. So I'll link that video in the description or the pinned comment. Just check both of them if you're interested in that. Vibration intensity, I have that set to off because I don't like vibration, but you could set it to weak, medium, strong. Same thing with the DualSense. And then you're going to have the trigger effect, which is what I talked about, like where like the Astro C40 doesn't work on PS5 games on the PS5, but it will work on PS4 games on the PS5. But again, you can set this. I set this to off. This is one of the problems that I had with the regular DualSense that just killed my triggers. Like with the original DualSense controller. A lot of the controllers were breaking with the trigger, and then they changed the little pin on the inside. I actually have a video on how to replace that as well. But that's pretty much it right there for the DualSense Edge. You have some other stuff here. Receive feedback when switching profiles. So if you hold down the function button and like the triangle, you know, it'll give you like a notification. So, you know, I have those on, you know, in game to let you know, like you can always show like the notification on the top right to let you know if you have 3 or 4 games set up. Maybe you can't remember like function and triangle is Warzone, or if it's function and square, it'll let you know which game or what you named it. So when you come up here to custom profiles, it would show me what I switched to, like RE, Resident Evil. And that's actually not for Resident Evil 4. That is for Resident Evil Village, I think. Then you have Warzone and Elden Ring. So, you know, it would let you know that. And then the function menu here, you can see this, display function menu. And you can turn that on, and then all functions if you wanted to know that. Brightness of controller indicators. So right here, this is the same as the DualSense. So you have these lights that go around the controller right here. And then this is just, you know, dim, medium, or bright. And then also the lights on the top of the controller, if you care to have that. Other settings on here, you know, you can take the tour. You can see if you need to update the software. And then you can reset it to like stock settings so that then when you reset it, you're not going to have your custom profiles. The only one that it will have is the default, and then you'd have to go back in here and set those up. But that's pretty much it right there with the DualSense Edge. It is $199. Do I think it's worth it? I do think it's worth it if you want to have the bottom buttons, if you want to have that Pro controller. I know like the Scuff has the 4 buttons. This one only has 2, same as the Astro C40. So you may be someone that prefers to have the 4 like paddles on the bottom. Someone like me, I think the 2 is fine. I'm going to map the 2 buttons that I use the most that require me to take my thumb off of the thumbstick. Most games, it's like square and circle. I think Diablo, I had it set up, and I think I used X and circle or something like that. I can't remember. But, you know, it's going to vary game to game. And, of course, your opinion may differ from mine. You may not like this. You may not think it's worth $199, and that's totally fine. Your opinion is your opinion. My opinion is my opinion. I think it's worth it. I like having the Pro type controller. I like the weight of it. I like the grip. I like the feel. And I'm very happy with the purchase. I've only had the controller for about 2 weeks now, but I am glad that I purchased it because it does work with a lot of games. Is it worth it? Ultimately, I can't say yes, it's worth it, because something's only worth what one is willing to pay for. If you're not willing to pay $200, then it may not be worth it to you. But if you are if you are willing to pay that, then yes, it's definitely worth it, in my opinion. If you have questions or comments, feel free to leave that down below. Hopefully you found this video helpful. I'm out. Peace.